Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mirabel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to sew this particular dress that has been trending everywhere. In my previous video, I showed how to cut it. Today we are going to be focusing on how to sew it. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then keep watching. Please remember to like this video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. With that being said, let's get started. So in my previous video, like I said earlier, I showed how to draft this pattern. So if you have not seen that, please do well to watch that video. So this is a fabric that I use for this particular dress. I have 1.5 yard for the floral fabric and then 1 yard for the crepe, plain crepe fabric. So this is the pattern paper that I cut out earlier in my other video. This is the armhole area and the neckline. So I'm going to be using this to cut the sleeve for this particular dress. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to extend the shoulder line like this, and then from the midpoint you're going to mark 4 inches or 5 inches depending on how full you want the sleeve to be. And then from there you're going to connect it to the armhole like this, and then after that you're just going to cut it out. And here we have the sleeve for the front. So make sure you label the neckline area so that you can differentiate the armhole from the neckline. And then this is the back pattern that we cut out. So I'll do the same thing like I did in front. I'll extend the shoulder line, and from the midpoint I'm going to mark 4 inches or 5 inches, and then from here I'll connect it to the armhole area like this, and I'll draw out this line as well, and I'll cut it out. So like I said, make sure you label the neckline so that you will not be confused which one is the neckline and which one is the armhole, because it can be very confusing. So right now I'm going to join the front and the back together at the shoulder line. So in order to do this, I'm going to make sure that the neckline of the front is aligning to that of the back and the shoulder is aligning together like this. So as you can see, the armhole is on the same line and the neckline is on the same line. So I'll just tape it down at this point, and I'll cut off any excess. If that is in case the front is longer than the back, I'll just cut it out like this so that they will be equal. And then I'll just take it to the fabric and I'll cut. So at this point, when you fold it, you can see the sleeve is already formed at this point like this. I've also gone ahead to cut on the fabric, that is pattern paper 1 and 2. I added 1/2 inch, while on the center front I cut it on fold. But every other part I added 1/2 inch. While for the side front here, I added 1/2 inch all through here, but for the side seam I added 1 inch, and I did not add any allowance to the armhole area. But you can add allowance if you want. And then at this point I'm going to cut on the lining as well. But for the lining I didn't cut it full, but for the side front I cut it full. Okay, so I just cut it to the hip line for the center front. Then now I'll just open it up like this, and this is what we have. So at this point I want to join the dart of the side front, that is join the side front to the center front at the dart area. So I'll just arrange it so that you can see what we have here, facing right side together like this. So now I'll be joining the side front to the center front, facing right side together. I'll align it and I'll be joining it at the dart line. So from the hip line, I'll join using 1/2 inch sewing allowance all the way to the neckline. Like this, just the way you join your darts for your bustier is the same way you're going to join this one as well. So for the back, I've also cut for the back, placing the pattern paper on the fabric. But what I did was, for the back I added 1/2 inch here, 1 inch here, 1/2 inch there. And then for the zipper line, I added 1/2 inch to the waistline, 1 inch to the neckline, and I connected it like this. Then 1 inch to the hip line, and I connected it. So you can see that the line is not straight, like it's slanted, especially at the waist area, while from the hip line down it is straight. I used 1 inch all the way down. So this is just to prevent zipper bulge as much as possible. Okay, so I've cut the sleeve and I added 1/2 inch, but I do not add any sewing allowance to the length of the sleeve. This is just to make sure everything is well fitted by the time we are done. And I cut 2 pieces for this. So now I'll just take it to the sewing machine and I'll sew. So first and foremost, the neckline. I'll join the lining to the fabric together, turn it to the right side and understitch it. And then after that, I will sew the armhole area. So make sure you notch the neckline and the front. That is, differentiates the front from the back by notching the front. So at this point, I've joined the that line of the side fronts to the center fronts, and this is what we have right here. So I've also pinned that down so that it will not be coming out, as you can see. So now I'm going to be drafting out the color of this particular dress. That is, I'll be cutting it from directly on the fabric. And to do that, I've drawn a straight line from here, and the length of it is 6 inches. So what I'm going to do now is from the up, I'm going to mark 3 inches below it, and I'll draw a straight line. So with this, you can see that there is a rectangle that is being formed at that point. So from here, I'm just going to curve it from the top of the fabric down to that 3 inches point. So there's no particular way of curving this, just curve it the way you want and create the shape that you want to create. Then I will repeat the same thing on the other side as well, so that I'll have 2 pieces of this particular color. So one is for the lining, one is for the main fabric, and I have cut for the left and the right side. So I'll take this to the sewing machine and I'll sew using 0.25 inch sewing allowance. So at this point, I've joined the dot line and I'm going to be attaching the collar to the dress at the neckline. So in order to to be able to do that, I'm going to place it on the neckline like this, and I'm going to be sewing. So I'll sew from that sharp edge of the V neckline that we have there. I'll sew from there all the way to about 1/2 inch away from the armhole. So make sure you don't sew all the way to the armhole area, just 1/2 inch away from the armhole. You're going to stop sewing. So when you do that, I'm going to show you the next step. So after you're done sewing, this is what it looks like. Like I said, 1/2 inch away from the armhole, and this is what it should look like. So now at this point, I'm going to be notching it 1/2 inch from the top of the collar. So make sure it's not more than 1/2 inch, just notch it open, and with that you can be able to bend it so that you can continue sewing from that 1/2 inch point all the way to the side seam area. So you're going to sew through the armhole curve like this. So I've done what I'm explaining, I've done it on this other side. I notched it and then I folded it and sewed it through the armhole all the way to the side seam like this. So when you're done, this is what it should look like. And this is what it should look like from inside. So after that, the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to be joining the lining. So I'd make sure you join the lining. That is the same thing you did for the front, you're going to do the same thing for the lining. The only difference is you're not going to be adding the collar to the lining, okay? So before you join the lining to the dress at the neckline points, by that time you must have sewn the sleeve, okay? So just sew the sleeve, and when you sew it, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to be joining the sleeve to the dress at the neckline point. Sorry, this part was not showing, but you're going to understand better as we go. Just arrange the sleeve, making sure that the place you're going to be joining to the neckline is the front part of the sleeve, and you're going to facing the neckline of the sleeve towards each other. So when you are joining the sleeve, you're going to sew 1 inch away from that V shape that you can see on the neckline. You're going to sew 1 inch away from it. So your sleeve will start 1 inch away from that V shape of the neckline. That's where you're going to place the sleeve. So you're going to sew from that point all the way to the armhole area like this. So make sure you are using 1/2 inch sewing allowance, and you sew from the side seam through the neckline all the way to the side seam of the other side. So by the time you're done sewing, you're going to notch it like this, and you turn it to the right side and understitch it. So when you successfully do that, this is what it should look like. As you can see, the sleeve is outside and the neckline of the sleeve are facing each other at the right side. Okay, at this point you can iron it very well. And now we're going to be focusing on the back side of the dress. So for the back side, I'm going to open it up like this, and this is what it looks like. So I'll just place it back together, right side facing each other, and I will sew from the hip line all the way down to the hemline. So after sewing, this is what it looks like. And now I'm going to be joining my invincible zip to the dress. So just the way you join invincible zip, you're going to join it to this particular dress. I'm not going to be showing that because I'm assuming we all know how to join zip to a dress. So after joining, this is what it looks like. So when you open it, you have something like this. And now I'm going to be joining the lining of the dress to the back. But before we do that, we are going to be joining the sleeve to the dress as well at the back area. So in order to do this, I'm going to join it 1 inch away from the armhole. You're going to be joining the sleeve to the dress. So make sure the neckline of the back side of the sleeve is facing each other. Okay, that is facing the zipper line. And the right side is facing each other. Okay, so now you're going to sew it. So make sure it's 1 inch away from the armhole area before you sew. So after sewing, you're going to join the lining to the dress as well at the neckline area. So as you can see, my lining is not long for the back, is short. So I've sewn this and I'll turn it to the right side and understitch it. And I'll turn it back to the wrong side and I'll sew closing the zipper line, and I'll also close the armhole area like that. So I'll do the same thing for the other side. And by the time we are done, this is what we have. Just go ahead and cut off the excess zipper allowance that we have there, and then you turn it to the right side. So after you're done, you're going to turn everything to the right side, close the zip and arrange it properly. You can also go ahead and iron this very well so that your work will be clean, and you can weave the lining so that it will not be coming out like fraying. And then now you're going to turn it to the wrong side, facing the side seam together, and you're going to be joining the front to the back using 1 inch sewing allowance, all the allowance that you left while you were cutting. Okay, so after you're done joining the front to the back, this is what it should look like. At this point, you can even go ahead and wear it, that is if the dress is yours, so that you can confirm if everything is in place before you go on to the next step. So at this point, we are going to be turning it to the right side, that is to the side, and this is what it looks like. So this is the place where we are going to be joining the gathers to. So here we can decide, this is a hip line that I've notched, and I'm going to go up by 2.5. That's where I want the gathers to start from. And then for the back, I'll do the same thing, 2.5 inch from the hip line right there. I'm going to mark it, and from here I'm going to measure from the 2.5 inches in front all the way to the 2.5 inches at the back. And what I got is 13 inches, so plus 1 inch for sewing allowance, that is 14 inches. So now on this pattern paper 3 that we drafted in my previous video, we are going to be doing a slash and spread on it. So in order to do this, I'm going to make sure that the hip line is the same width with that of the hemline. So remember in the previous video I slanted it, but now I'm just going to make it straight so that it's going to be exactly the length of my hip. Okay, then now I will label it the side seam and the front, and at this point I'm going to be slashing it. But before I do that, I'm going to go up by 2.5 inch from the hip line, and that is where I want my gathers to start from. You can go by 3, or you can even start slashing directly on the hip line. That's if you want the gathers to start from the hip line, you can start slashing from there. But mine, I'm using 2.5 inches above the hip line, so I'll just draw a straight line like this. Then after that, I'll just demarcate the remaining pattern paper into 4 equal parts. So it does not necessarily have to be equal, but try as much as possible so that there will be almost the same size. Then I will do the same thing for the back as well. So make sure you label it the back so that you not get confused, and then you make sure the hip line is the same with the hemline. They should be the same length. Then after that, you're going to label the side seam so that you will not confuse it with that curved part where the gathers is going to be. And then on the curved part, that's where you're going to mark 2.5 inch upward, that is from the hip line, and you're going to connect it all the way to the hemline. So after doing this, you're just going to make sure you demarcate the remaining pattern paper into four parts, and then you label it 4 to 1. So as you can see, the side seam of the front is the same side with that of the back, so that by the time we are joining, it's going to be easy for us. So this is the pattern paper, the fabric that I use for the gathers. And now I'm going to place it on fold like this. So when I place it on fold, this is what it looks like. So the length of it is about 27 inches, while the width of it is about 40 inches on fold. That means if you open it up, then the width of it should be about 80 inches long. So if your fabric is not long, you can cut and join different piece of fabric just to get the length that we need. Then after that, I'm going to start slashing and spreading the pattern paper on the fabric. So the first thing I'm going to do is the front pattern, I'm going to slash it open from 1 all the way to 4. So just pay attention to how I'm slashing it so that you know what you are going to do when you are doing yours as well. So after slashing it all through, now I'm going to start spreading it on the fabric. So in order to do this, I'm going to take pattern paper 1 and I'm going to place it 1 inch away from the center. That is the place that is on fold, 1 inch. And then make sure it's half an inch above the hemline. That is the downside of the fabric. So 1 inch away from the place that is on fold and half an inch away from the hemline. So I'll pin it down at the upside and also at the hip line like this. Then after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my measuring tape and I'm going to measure from pattern paper 1. I'll measure 3 inches away from it, and that's where I'll be placing my pattern paper 2. So make sure you mark the 3 inches right there, and then you do the same thing on the hip line as well. You mark your 3 inch and then you pin it down like this. So you pin it on the downside and on the upside and make sure that it's half an inch away from the hemline. And then you continue doing the same thing on pattern paper 3 inches away and for the hemline and 3 inches on the hip line points. So take note that the 3 inches that I'm using is how full I want the gathers to be, and I'm considering the fabric that I have. If you have more fabric, you can extend it 4 inch on each pattern paper. You can use 4 inch instead of 3 inches, and that will make your gathers to be very full and more beautiful. So this is what I have and that's what I'm using. So when I'm done with the front pattern, now I'll go ahead and slash through the back pattern. So just like I did for the front, I'll slash it from 4 all the way to 1. So now I'm going to be placing it on the pattern on the fabric. So just like the front, I'm going to separate it 3 inches away from the side seam. I'm going to place the side seam of the back on it. 3 inches away from the side seam of the front, I'm going to place the side seam of the back. So make sure that is the side seam of the front and the side seam of the back are on the same, that is, they are following each other. Then after that, you can place the remaining pattern paper 3 inches, just the way we did for the front. You're going to do the same thing right here. So by the time you're done, this is what we have right here. So the next thing is from the top of the paper, I'm going to be marking half an inch from 1 all the way to 1 for the back. That is 1 from the front all the way to 1 at the back. That is, I'm going to mark half an inch all the way to the other side of the fabric. So from 1 to 4 in front, and then from 4 to 1 at the back, like this. So sorry it's not showing, but by the time I'm joining it, you'll see exactly what I'm doing right here. So at this point, I'm going to mark half an inch all the way down to the hemline. And then while I will now start curving it from the hip line, I'll curve it, connecting that half an inch point that I marked from 1, connect it to 2, then connect it to 3, like that, all the way to the back pattern at the other side. So just make sure you maintain the half an inch sewing allowance, connecting it from one side to the other. So if you notice, the front is shorter than the back, so just try your best to connect it nevertheless, following that half an inch point like this. So it may not be, it does not necessarily have to be well curved, but just make sure you maintain the half an inch sewing allowance that we marked earlier. So after that, at this point, this pattern paper 4 here, I'm just going to smoothen the curve right there so that it will not be bent, it will just be well arranged like this. So now I'm just going to start cutting it, but before I do that, I will extend, just like I said before, you extend this line by half an inch and then you cut. So you're adding half an inch all round, half an inch on the side seam, half an inch on the hemline, half an inch on the curved part that is the top of the fabric. So pay attention to the way I'm cutting it. If you notice, everywhere is half an inch above the pattern paper. Although for 4 it's more than half an inch, but it's completely fine. So just continue cutting all the way to the other side like this. So when you reach the pattern paper 1 for the back, you're also going to add half an inch for the curved parts so that you'll be able to attach it. So now make sure you notch where the gathers is starting from. So notch these points exactly where that pattern paper 1 is, notch it, and then you also notch the other side. The essence of the notch is to know where you are going to start your gathers from and when you're going to end it, so that when you are joining it to the fabric that is the other side, you will know exactly how to gather it. Another thing to do is to place this fabric on fold like this. Just fold it into equal parts like this, and then you're going to be taking the midpoints of this. So notch the midpoints as well. So this is to help you know exactly where to join the fabric at the side seam of the other one, so you know where to join it like that. And then another thing also is to notch the front. So just pick any parts of the front and notch it. With this, you will be able to know where the front of the fabric is and where the back is, so that you'll be joining it on the front part of the other piece that will be attaching it to. Okay, so after you are done notching all these points, you can remove the fabric. And since we cut on fold, we have 2 pieces of this. So one is for the left side and the other is for the right. So now I'm going to be sewing from that part that we notched. I'm going to run the gather stitch from that point all the way to the other side. Okay, I'll do the same thing for the other piece of fabric as well. So after we are done running the gather stitch, I'm just going to go ahead and start gathering it. So I'm going to draw the bobbin thread and I'll gather it all the way to the other side. So just the way you gather, you're going to do the same thing right here. So after gathering, you're going to measure from that point that we notched all the way to the other side. So when we are measuring it, we are making sure that we are getting that 14 inches that we got when we measured from this point to the next. We got 14 inches here, so we are going to make sure we have 14 inches also on the gathers, so that by the time we are joining, everything is equal. So now I'm going to place the fabric, the gathered fabric, onto the other piece, and I'm going to start joining from the hemline. I would join all the way to the hip line, and that 2.5 inch point where the gathers is supposed to start from, I'm going to make sure that the gathers is starting from that point all the way to the other side. So I'm sewing using half an inch sewing allowance that we left So I'll just join from the hemline. I'll sew 1/2 inch to the hip line, to the side seam. That is that midpoint that we marked. It should be at the side seam. That is where the back and the front is joined together. That midpoint should be at the side seam. So I'm just looking for the midpoint here that I marked, that is I notched earlier, and this is the midpoint. I'm going to just join it to the side seam where the back and the front are joined together. I'm going to make sure that it's aligned at that point, and I will pin it down. And also remember, we notched the front to be able to differentiate it from the back. So when you are joining the fabric, make sure you are joining the front of the gathered fabric to the front of the other piece, okay? And then the back, you are joining it to the back of the other piece. Then now I'll just run the gathers. I'll just sew it using 1/2 inch from the hemline all the way to the side seam, back to the hemline of the back. So by the time you're done, this is what we have. We are almost done with today's class. So all we have to do now, I have these buttons here that I was able to create. Like, I went to the market and they did this for me using the fabric of they're using the floral fabric. So now I have just 8 of these buttons. So I'll just make sure to arrange it equally from the neckline all the way to the hemline of the dress. So the size of the button is dependent on what you want. You can use size 30 or size 36. Whatever works for you is okay. So now you use your hand needle and your thread and you sew it onto the dress like this. So just arrange it anyhow you want to arrange it. Whatever looks fine for you, just arrange it. And now I also have another piece of rope that I've sewn, and I'll be attaching it to that curved part of the V neckline, just the way it's on the dress. That's basically all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't, leave a comment, appreciate me by saying something so that YouTube will recommend my video to other people. Thank you so much. I'll see you in my next one.